So in this segment of our mathematics videos, we continue looking at index notation as we focus on laws of indices or exponents. So there are some laws, so I refer to them. There are about 8 of them that you need to know, but of course we can create even more than, but let's show you the basic ones that you need to know. So the first law that you are going to be dealing with is what we can say law of multiplication. So the law of multiplication. So according to the law of multiplication, it states that if you have a raised to the power m multiplied by a raised to the power n, if the bases are the same, you take the base, then you add the power, so it will be m plus n. That is according to the law of multiplication. Now, what do I mean when I actually say that? Well, it simply means that, for example, if I've got 2 raised to the power 3 multiplied by 2 raised to the power 1, because the bases are the same, you get the base, then you just add the power. So it will be 3, it is going to be 3 plus 1, which is equal to 2 raised to the power 4. That's what we mean. If the question says evaluate, then you need to find the actual value of 2 raised to the power 4, which means 2 times, you multiply 2 4 times. So that is what they mean when it comes to that. So that is what you need to remember. Again, if I have maybe 5 raised to the power 2 multiplied by 5 raised to the power 4, then it simply means, because the bases are the same, it simply means that I will get the base 5, then I'll add the powers. It will be 2 plus 4. So 2 plus 4, that will give me 5 raised to the power 6. If the question says evaluate, you need to find the actual value. You can use your calculator. So for example, 2 raised to the power 4, in this case will give me 16. So if the question was saying, evaluate, then it simply means give them the actual value. And of course, 5 raised to the power 6, that is going to give me, it's a very big value, that is giving me 15,625. That's what it simply means. So this is what we call as being the law of multiplication. Let's look at the second one. We call it as being the law of division when you are dividing. So according to the law of division, if you have a raised to the power m divided by a raised to the power n. Remember, this can also be written as a raised to the power m over a raised to the power n. So this is the same as writing it like that. So if you are dividing and the bases are the same, you just take the base, then you subtract the power, so it will be m minus n. So that's the simplest that you can ever do. So that is the way you deal with them. E.g., if I have 2 raised to the power 5 divided by 2 raised to the power 3, it simply means it will be 2, you take the base, then what do? It will be 5 minus 3. So 5 minus 3 will give you a 2 there, and 2 raised to the power 2, it is going to give you a 4 there. So now it applies even if you have got 2 or more. So it can be 5 raised to the power, 5 raised to the power 5 to the power 3 divided by 5 maybe raised to the power 3 divided again by 5 maybe raised to the power 1. You apply the same. The bases are all the same, so you can get the base. What do you do to the powers? Because you are dividing, you subtract. So it will be 5 minus 3 minus 1. And 5 minus 3 minus 1, that is going to give you 5 raised to the power 1. 5 raised to the power 1 will just give you a 5 there. So it does apply even if you have, as long as the bases are all the same, that is going to apply. So this is what we call as being the law of division. All right, let's talk about other meanings that you are going to appreciate there. Now call it number 3 that you need to know. So meaning, so let me say meaning of maybe a number raised to the power 0, when the index is 0. So any number, according to that, we can say that any number, so we can say that any number, you know, raised, you know, to the power, any number raised to the power 0 is 1. So that's the key that you need to remember. So if you have a raised to the power 0, that will always give you a 1. In simple terms, any number that you raise to the power 0, it could be e.g. 2 raised to the power 0, that's a 1. It could be a letter x raised to the power 0, that will still give me a 1. It could be 5 raised to the power 0, it will be a 1. It could be 100 raised to the power 0, it would be a 1. We are just applying, you know, this one. Of course, you can prove it. It is possible you are able to prove it by using what we are calling as being, you know, logarithms in order for you to prove it in case you want to prove it. Okay, again, we can also have, you know, a meaning. So maybe I can simply say meaning of a raised to 1 over n. Suppose you have got a, the base, then raised to a fractional. In simple terms, you have got a fractional index. So if it is a fractional index, this value at the bottom here becomes a root. So it is the root of the base should be inside of the root that you have. Is it a square root? Is it a cube root? Is it a 1? So now remember, this is the meaning of that. That is the meaning when you have that. I'll explain what that simply means. So in this case, you can have a square root. A square root, you know, you just write it like that. It should be a 2, but we don't write a 2 there. We just write the root. You can have a cube root. In this case, a cube root starting from 3 and above, you can actually indicate a 3, but for a square root, we don't indicate there. So if there's a 2 here, we don't actually indicate it. So what do I mean in this case? For example, imagine I have 8 raised to 1 over 2. What does that mean? Well, this 2 will become the root, the square root. So you don't write a 2, then the base will go inside of the square root. You ignore that 1 there. So what is the square root? Square root means, this one doesn't have a perfect square, so let me take 16. So that would be 16. The square root of 16 is simply a 4 there. That's what we mean. If you have maybe 25 raised to 1 over 2, that will become the square root of 25. The square root of 25, what is that number when you multiply it 2 times? It will give you the number inside. It's a 5. 5 times 5, so that's the square root of that, and that's the meaning of that you need to remember. Okay, hopefully we are together and you are getting the sense of what I'm trying to give you. So these are laws that you are going to use later on. You are going to apply them in later concepts that you are going to learn. We can look at number 5. I can also look at you know, meaning of a, then maybe m over n. Suppose you have got a, the raised to a fractional index, but in this case you don't have a 1 on top, you have again a number. What does that mean? At the bottom, the one at the bottom changes to a root, whatever root it is. The base goes inside of the root. Because it's not a 1 on top, whatever you get, you raise it to the power m. And this is where I now wanted to demonstrate that 8, 2 over 3. So in this case, what do we mean? This 3 will become now a cube root of what? 8. But whatever I have, I'll raise it to the power. I'll raise it to the power 2. So cube root means, what is that number when you multiply it 3 times? It will give you 8. It is actually 2. 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2. 4 times 2 is 8. So the cube root of 8 is a 2. But 2 raised to the power, remember 2 raised to the power 2 means 2 times 2, which will give you a 4. That's what we mean there. Hopefully we are together. Suppose again you have maybe 27, 2 over 3. How is that going to be? Again, it is going to be the cube root of 27 and this whole thing raised to the power, raised to the power 2, the 2 is on top. Cube root of 27, what is that number when you multiply it 3 times? It will give you 27. it is actually 3, but raised to the power 3. 3 raised to the power 3 does not mean 3 times 2. No, it means the base should be multiplied 2 times 3 times 3, which is going to give you a 9. All right. Suppose you have 25. All right. So suppose you have 25, or let me say rather, maybe you have 64, and you say 3 over 2. What does that mean in this case? Well, the 2 there will mean the square root of 64, but whatever you get, you raise it to the power 3. What is the square root of 64? What is that number when you multiply it 2 times to give you 64? It is simply 8, but that 8 should be raised to the power 3. 8 raised to the power 3 means 8 times 8 times 8. Of course, you can use your calculator. That will give you a big value. 8 raised to the power 3, that is going to give you a 512. So that's the meaning of this rule there that you need to remember. So that is what it actually means. All right, let's move on to the 60th one, so that we can actually get to guide you. So we can talk about negative. So let me be dealing now with a negative index. Suppose we are dealing with a negative index, so I can say meaning of a raised to negative n. Suppose you have got a raised to negative n. What does that mean? So if you have a raised to negative n, that negative will become a 1 over a raised to a positive index. So that negative becomes a 1 over a raised to a positive index. So that's the meaning of that expression, that we're having there. For example, what I mean is that, e.g., if you have got 4 raised to negative 2, it simply means that negative will be a 1 over 4 raised to a positive index, a positive 2. You've seen the negative has disappeared. So it will be 1 over, what is 4 raised to the power 2? It means 4 times 4, which will give you 1 over 16. So that is what we mean. Suppose I had 9 raised to the power negative 2. What does that mean? It means that negative is a 1 over 9 raised to the power 2. Remember, 9 raised to the power 2 means 9 times 9, so it will be 1 over 81. I hope you are getting the sense of that. It is possible that you can actually have that. So it is possible when you have a negative. Now, it is true also, we can also do the opposite, meaning when I have got 1 over x raised to the power n, I'm just using that, you can also go back like that, meaning you can drop this one. When you drop this one will become a negative, so it will be x raised to negative n. So don't forget that it is just one and the same concept that we are dealing with. So for example, if I had 1 over 3 raised to the power 2, I can drop that 1 and it will become 3 raised to negative 2. That's what we mean. If you had 5 raised to 1 over that can be, when that 1 drops down, it will be 5 raised to the power negative 3. Suppose I had 1 over 2 there. You have seen that. That can still be written as 2 minus 1. So it's possible that you can actually have that. So that's what we mean. So this can go on and so forth. So that's the meaning. So you need to remember the rule. Let's look at other concepts. That's number 7. Let's look at maybe 7 there. Suppose I have a over b. So let me say meaning. Let me just say meaning of a over b raised to the power let's say m. What's the meaning of that? When you have a over b, which is a fraction in bracket, raised to the power m, this is the same as saying a raised to the power m over b raised to the power m. So don't get confused. It is just that simple. What do I mean? Suppose I have 2 over 3, then I say raised to the power 2. What does that mean? Well, it simply means 2 raised to the power 2 over 3 raised to the power 2. You can work out 2 raised to the power 2, that's a 4, and 3 raised to the power 2, that will give you a 9. That's what we mean there. What about if you have 5 over 6 raised to the power 2? What's the meaning? Oh yes, 5 raised to the power 2 over 6 raised to the power 2. If you want, you can work out that further. 5 raised to the power 2 is 25, and 6 raised to the power 2 is 36. That's what we mean. So you can see the meaning of that very important concept. Let's look at 8. Let's look at 8. I hope you are getting the concept of what we are talking about as being indices. Again, let's have this one, meaning of maybe you have A over B. Let me say you have got let me say you have A over B raised to a negative index. So you can see it has now been raised to a negative index. So here we do have a negative index. As compared to the previous situation, it was positive. So if you have A over B raised to negative n, what does that mean? Well, you can get rid of that negative by exchanging what is inside of the bracket. So the B goes on top, the A comes at the bottom. So it will be B over A, then this will be raised to a positive index. That's what I mean. Suppose I had negative 2 as an example. Suppose I had suppose I had 2, or let me say I had 3 over 2 raised to the power negative 2. How would that be? Well, to get rid of that negative, just exchange what is in there. This guy goes there and that guy comes there. So it will be 2 over 3 in the bracket, and that will be raised to that. So it will be 2 raised to that and 3 raised to that, which will give you 4 over 9. So that is what we mean. So that is the meaning of that. Now, possibly someone might actually be arguing, but how is that the case? Well, it is actually the case because look at it this way. Look at it this way. Let's try to analyze it again. If you have A over B raised to negative n, yes, according to what I told you, that negative can be 1 over, it will be A over B raised to the power n. You have seen that, huh? Yeah, so this would be 1 over, if you look at A raised to the power n and B raised to the power n. Now look at that. That actually, if you look at, it's 1 divided by A raised to the power n over B raised to the power n. Remember, 1 can be written over 1. So if I say times, this guy will go up and this guy will go down. So it will be B to the power n over A to the power n. What will be 1 times that will give you B to the power n, and 1 times that will give you A to the power n. So this will come to B to the power n over A to the power n. Have you seen how it has become? Yeah, so that's why you don't need to start wasting time. Just flip what is there. This is a rule that you can use if you have a negative index there. Just ignore it by exchanging what is in there. So that is what we mean. So basically, that is what you can do. Let me give you just a few concepts and see if you are able to. You can also take a piece of paper, write them down. It's actually okay. There's what we call also as being a double index. So where you have double index, for example, meaning, let me say meaning of A raised to the power m, again raised to the power n. So suppose you have A raised to the power m, and again this is raised to another index. That's what we call double index. Well, that simply means you just need to multiply the index. So it's m times n. That's what it simply means. There's nothing complicated. E.g., if you had 5 raised to the power 2, again it was raised to the power 3. It simply means it will be, it is going to be 5 2 times 3, which is 2 times 3 will give you a 6. If the question told you to evaluate, you could have actually gone further and looked at that. So that's the meaning, and that is what we are going to be having there. So these are some of the basic rules that you need to remember to solve. In my next discussion, I'll look at just questions so that we can practice together and see how you can still apply all these laws that we are looking at for exponents. Thank you so much for watching my videos.